My hope is to have a series of hearings, and one of them being a public hearing, so we can at least provide the information to the American public to the degree that will not compromise our national security, to give them some kind of resolve and I think quell their thirst for this wonderful phenomenon that we've been talking about and movies have been made about for the past 7 or 8 decades.
You did it. The crazy son of a bitch, you did it. Now here's Representative Andre Carson of Indiana, who is the chairman of the House Intelligence Committee's Subcommittee on Counterterrorism, Counterintelligence, and Counterproliferation, informing the public that this group is set to hold the hearing at 10 a.m. Eastern, May 17th. Carson writes, Congress hasn't held a public hearing on unidentified aerial phenomena, UFOs, in over 50 years. That will change next week when I lead a hearing in House Intel on this topic and the national security risk it poses. Americans need to know more about these unexplained occurrences. Lou Elizondo responds, Thank you, Congressman Carson, for your continued vigilance on this topic. You are on the right side of history. This quote by Representative Carson that was included in a Bloomberg article expresses one of the items he wants to accomplish as it pertains to increasing governmental transparency on the enigma of UAP. The quote, There are ways that we can raise questions that ufologists have raised for many years and just average everyday citizens have raised for decades now, Carson said, standing outside the Capitol. We all watch television. We've heard things. We've read things, he said. We want to see the footage and have it explained to us. That's what we want to accomplish. Now, in that light, Richard Butt, which is obviously a pseudonym, but he's followed by Lou Elizondo and appears to be an insider, wrote on Twitter, Congressman Representative Adam Schiff, as part of Tuesday's hearings, will you compel the DOD to sanitize and or declassify videos and photos of UAP that do not compromise sources or methods? New data would go a long way in pushing this topic forward by garnering additional public interest, to which Music and Truth responds. The media awareness from that would immediately start a chain reaction that would pressure the DOD to have to be more forthcoming with Congress then and into the future too, so it benefits everyone. As far as what I expect will unfold during this historical UAP hearing, I have chosen not to have any expectations and simply allow it to unfold and find out what it will comprise of when that moment comes. But it is absolutely worth emphasizing that this is a hearing about UAP, not about drones from China or Russia, not about planes in the distance or air clutter, but about technological machines that are unidentified. That's what this is about. Make no mistakes about it. And so no matter what direction this hearing goes, it's a manifestation of Congress being very serious about this issue and wanting answers for themselves and others. And that is exciting. But here are some perspectives that some have provided on Twitter about the best way to look at this upcoming hearing. Here's what Rogue UAPTF had to say. On Tuesday, we will have an open congressional hearing about UAP UFO. If you are reading this, you made it happen. This will be the first of many hearings in the pursuit of transparency, and it will simply scratch the surface. The future is very bright. Journalist Chad Pergram wrote, House Intelligence Committee to hold hearing on May 17 on UFOs, or as the committee described it, unidentified aerial phenomena. Representative Tim Burchett of Tennessee wrote, a public hearing is long overdue, but it'll be a waste of time if the Pentagon isn't forthcoming with its information. We've asked the Pentagon to fix a problem it created in the first place, and I predict these officials won't be nearly as transparent as they should be. Disclosure activist Steve Bassett chimes in and writes, it's just the beginning, Tim. You have broken the ice for other committees to follow. Congratulations. You are making history. During this open hearing, 2 top defense officials will be questioned about UAP. One of them is named Ronald Moultrie, who is the Undersecretary of Defense for Intelligence and Security, and the other is named Scott Bray, who is the Deputy Director of Naval Intelligence. I am unsure if anyone else will be questioned for the public or classified hearing that will follow, of which we won't get to attend for obvious reasons. Chris Mellon dropped a really excellent article on May 13th titled Draft Issues and Questions for the House UAP Hearing on May 17th. In this article, he discusses some questions he'd like asked during the upcoming hearing. I will share some of his thoughts with you. Perhaps the most important issue to consider for Tuesday's hearing is the question of UAP in space. DoD and the DNI have acknowledged UAP in the atmosphere and even the ocean. But what about space? The USAF is trying to avoid the issue altogether by employing the highly pedantic argument that because UAP references aerial phenomena, they have no obligation to include space-based trackings in their UAP reporting. I agree the term UAP is linguistically problematic and should perhaps be changed eventually, but this doesn't excuse the Air Force's behavior. If members can confirm UAP in space, they'll make history and help to eliminate an entire category of potential explanations having to do with atmospheric phenomena, Chinese lanterns, civilian drones, etc. In another paragraph, Mellon writes, "We understand that in the Nimitz case and others, UAP were detected descending from above 80,000 feet. Did the massive space surveillance radar at nearby Beale Air Force Base not detect these objects along with the USS Princeton? If not, why not? More broadly, what about the innumerable number of cases reportedly involving objects seen shooting straight up and out of sight at incredible, potentially hypersonic speeds? It is hard to believe that with all this activity in the upper atmosphere, nothing has been observed in space that is equally mysterious in terms of origins and capabilities. With that in mind, here are some questions I hope come up on Tuesday." Congressman Adam Schiff, who is part of the Gang of Eight, which equates to him having an extremely powerful position within the United States Congress, and who will be part of the upcoming hearing on UAP, wrote the following: "There's much to learn about unidentified aerial phenomena, but one thing is sure. The American people deserve full transparency. Next week at House Intel, we'll give the public a chance to hear from experts on one of the greatest mysteries of our time." Elizondo responds, "Sir, thank you for your courage and efforts. True patriotism is sometimes hard to measure, but in this case, it's obviously apparent. Thank you for your service." And I really like this analysis by Klaus. He writes, "Schiff calling Bray and Moultrie experts on UFOs seems like a preemptive way to apply pressure to me, especially if these experts decide to stonewall on one of the great mysteries of our time." On May 12th, Rob Heatherly tweeted, "Lou Elizondo recently at Capitol Hill, at Lou Elizondo." So Lou Elizondo, Capitol Hill, looks like he's there in preparation for the UAP hearings. And of course, I quoted the tweet and said, "It's UAP, DEFCON 1. I want to share with you a series of absolutely fascinating tweets by Eric Weinstein. To set the stage, I'll share with you something that author David Bates wrote to sum up very succinctly what has transpired. I'm not going to rehash it in detail because I've covered it before. But anyways, David Bates wrote, Harvard-educated mathematician Eric Weinstein acknowledged that he and fellow podcaster Sam Harris were contacted last year by someone in or close to the government, although he is vague on this point, about preparing the public for a paradigm shift, that UFOs are real, whatever that means. Now, to set you up for Weinstein's recent fascinating tweets, let's start here. Narkill writes, "Yeah, I think he was told not to talk about it anymore until a certain event, the public hearings. After next Tuesday, you will see people coming out of the woodwork to talk about this issue, and that, my friends, is where our discernment will become vitally important." Matthew Van Vieve responds, "Interesting. It's a question I've been asking myself for 11 months. Why did Harris say 3 times he's been contacted, etc., then just shut up without any further explanation? At least you have a possible explanation. Have you heard other plausible ones?" Now, Eric quotes Matthew Van Vieve's tweet that I just read and then states, "For those of you speculating on channels reaching out to Sam Harris, myself, and others on UAP, UFO, there was a minimum of 1 planned dissemination that got called off for reasons unknown. I'm not at liberty to discuss, but I can say why people like Sam are likely to be quiet." Eric continues, "What has so far been released to the public by government has been minimal. No one I know wants to incinerate credibility becoming a true believer over a tiny number of relatively low-quality U.S. government videos, which, at least to me, prove absolutely nothing. So then, why be interested? Because there is an ocean of weird behavior and claims coming from otherwise sober-seeming U.S. government and former U.S. government people. And a lot of it is weirdly consistent. So I'm totally underwhelmed by the direct evidence so far, but I'm baffled by the indirect evidence. What generated this? I won't speak for Sam Harris, but I failed to generate any good explanation for the repeated and fairly consistent assertions of DoD IC types with no evident training in acting or theater, to say nothing of ordinary non-US government people. So none of us knows what to think truly. Something huge is up. It could be a psychological operation. It could be next generation spoofing by an adversary. It could be a mass psychosis. But I don't want to speculate beyond a decision tree. Something huge is up, and I dug hard, but failed to get beyond indirect evidence. Eric finishes off his thread with these two tweets. What is worse? The most parsimonious explanations are the obvious too. A, our government is engaged in deception and utterly brilliant at it, or B, aliens. If the former, it is more competent than we ever suspected. Everything else is less parsimonious, but I can't make sense of it. One request, stop speculating. Some folks are reaching out. They pulled back a bit, and I for one may stop talking about this if asked due to the security issues. But that which has been shared with the public is not enough to go on. It's the indirect evidence we are watching. On May 12th, Dean Johnson broke a huge story. Breaking. Accomplished physicist, intelligence officer to head Pentagon UAP office. My sources say Sean Kirkpatrick, PhD, will direct the AOIMSG, the office that the Gillibrand Rubio Gallego law empowered to aggressively tackle the UFO problem. Titan provides interesting commentary. Kirkpatrick seems like an ideal choice. Has insight into our capabilities, our enemies' capabilities, and all the science in between. And I think it's safe to say he'll be able to determine whether an object is a distant plane or not, laugh out loud. So apparently, Dr. Sean Kirkpatrick is now the sitting head of the taxpayer-funded, bipartisan-supported UAP program in the Pentagon. And my question about Kirkpatrick is not whether he's qualified or not. This dude is extraordinarily qualified as far as I'm concerned. And you can read Johnson's article if you like. I will link it below. But what is he going to say about UAP? We have Elizondo, who's no longer working for the Pentagon. He may do consultations, but he's not sitting in the Pentagon employed currently by them. And we've heard what he had to say about UAP and continues to say about it. His sentiments are quite straightforward. And that is, UAP, at least the interesting UAP, are almost certainly not coming from adversaries, nor anything within the United States military inventory, which doesn't leave us with a whole lot of choices. Technology, surpassing anything an adversary has or the American government has. Where does that leave us? Well, you know the answer to that. I don't have to tell you. It's pretty obvious. But is Dr. Kirkpatrick going to have the same sentiments? Or, on the contrary, is he going to have a completely different spin on UAP? I have no idea. But if his perspective is aligned with Elizondo's, well, that's going to be absolutely fascinating. And I would imagine it would be, because frankly, I think the government knows. I mean, this has just been ridiculed and insulated for a very long time, and now it's starting to come out. That's my perspective. I could be wrong. So I do anticipate that his sentiments will align with Elizondo's. And now we have a face to represent the UAP office, which is great. We need that. We need not just some bureaucrat that's faceless, but a face, a name to answer to the American people, to answer to the world. That's what we need, and now that's apparently what we got. And that's hot. I will leave you with an excellent and relevant quote from Lou Elizondo, taken from an article by Liberation Times on May 10th, titled, Historic Public UFO Hearings Are Upon Us as Pentagon Commits to Transparency. Lou Elizondo, former director of the Advanced Aerospace Threat Identification Program, ATIP, that investigated UAP, has been engaging with congressional committees since leaving the Pentagon in 2017, welcomed the news stating, regarding the upcoming hearings, the time has come for the American people and our elected officials to have complete transparency into this topic, including any historical efforts and the results of those endeavors that the taxpayer has funded. We should welcome anyone who can provide insight to provide that information to Congress without fear of reprisal or retribution. Today's announcement of open congressional hearings on UAP is an important step. This is a vital bipartisan issue, and it is encouraging to see Democrats and Republicans come together in support of more openness and transparency. Our nation has a complex history with this subject, and this first hearing should be followed by many more. I am hopeful that this is just the beginning, and my colleagues and I applaud the extraordinary action taken by the House Intelligence Committee. Please don't forget to subscribe. And if you'd like to support this channel, you can check out my merch shop where I sell t-shirts. You could become a patron. You could become a YouTube member. You could even just give me a one-time donation. All of those possibilities are in the description below. Or you could just slap a like on this bad boy, and I will appreciate it so much. Thank you so much for watching, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Special thanks to all patrons, YouTube members, those that have bought merch, those that have given me a one-time donation. I couldn't do without you. Thank you so much. See you in the next episode.